The Garmin cycling radar now comes with a camera. Is it a brilliant safety accessory or an unnecessary gadget? Watch this and decide if the upgrade is worth it for you. Hello again. Today I'm looking at everything you need to know about the Garmin Varia Rct715 rear light radar and camera to help you decide if it's a worthwhile purchase or not. I did a video a few months ago when I opened the box of my new unit and promised to do a full review after plenty of use, so here's that review. The Rct715 is an upgrade on the previous versions with the addition of a camera and some cosmetic and physical changes. So I'm focusing here on the changes with the new upgrade. If you're completely new to Garmin Varia radar lights, I'll link the full review of the original version up here in a minute and at the end of the video, because the way this one works out on the road with respect to the radar and the light is exactly the same as the old version. Once I've gone through the differences and how they work, I'll finish with my own experience after using it for several months along with my recommendations. So a quick reminder then of the physical differences between this and the older model, which is this fella. And as you can see, if we compare it to the previous one, it is bigger and it's thicker, and therefore it's heavier, but you know, it's not a massive amount. And when we're talking about extra weight on the bike, I've got a bit of extra weight on the bike that I could do with getting rid of by eating less cake. So a slightly different bit of weight there is really not going to cause me a problem. So let's look at the unit up close. First of all, Garmin have entered the 21st century finally and started to put USB-C ports on devices rather than the outdated micro USB. So hidden behind here is the charging port, which you also use to connect it to a laptop, but more of that shortly. The device button here turns the unit on with a 1 second hold and turns it off again with a 2 second hold. The smaller button here is the camera button, which I doubt you will actually use. It can be pressed for 1 second to take a picture or save a video, but why would you be reaching behind you to do that while you're cycling, unless of course you wanted to get a dramatic shot of you flying off your bike as you try that gymnastic maneuver. A 4 second hold turns the camera off, but given the camera is the only advantage over the cheaper version, that would really defeat the point of buying this unit. There are 2 status lights along this area here, one for the camera and one for the device itself, which tell you the usual information like is it charging, is it pairing, etc, etc. There's even a light that tells you that the camera has less than 60 minutes life in it, but it's pretty pointless again as it's behind you on the bike and you'll never see it. But you can get that information on your head unit. Finally here you have a microphone, and you can choose to have audio on your video clips or not. In my experience, I'm just getting a load of road noise and not much else. On the back is the connector to fix onto the mount on your bike, more of that in a sec. And behind here you would use a coin or a screwdriver to open up, is where the SD card is stored. And a big tip here, the camera will record 30-second videos and overwrite older files when the card is full. It comes with a hopelessly inadequate 16GB card. I bought a 128GB card at the same time as buying the unit. I recommend you do the same, and hopefully Garmin eventually starts shipping this with better storage. How it fixes to your bike is different to the older models, which use the same quarter-turn mount as the Garmin head units do, whereas this latest one is entirely different. Claimed to be more secure, although if your Varia flew off on the old style mount, I'm sure it would have been down to user error. You can see this just sits in a mount with the lever up, then you push the lever down and then an extra push until you hear the reassuring click, and then it's not going anywhere. Taken off as reverse, you lift the lever up, it still won't come out. So if the lever accidentally lifted up during a ride, it's not going to go flying away. You need an extra push up until you hear the click, and then he comes out. When you pair the unit with your Garmin head unit, two new widgets are created. First, it adds this screen which allows you to take a photo or a 30-second video on the fly from your handlebars without it being activated by the radar itself. And on here you can see that you can actually see the battery level of it, and you can press that and change whether you want it to be on radar activity only recording, or you can change the resolution. Secondly, it creates a light network if you're using a Garmin Edge device, where you can control the light modes from the handlebars. The light modes are also changed by cycling through them with the device button on the unit. But be aware that having it on your head unit overrides any choice made with the button. On first use, I took a while trying to work out why it wasn't changing when I was constantly pressing this button, until I realized that you're overriding whatever you want to choose on the unit by having it as a choice on your head unit, and you can cancel that by pressing the cancel override button. So you can see the different modes here, and this is where we address the most obvious controversy around this new unit, because a power hungry camera has been added. The battery life then is significantly lower than the older light and radar models with no camera. So first of all, you have solid mode. It's a high intensity light that only flashes when it detects a vehicle 140 meters away. This has a battery life of 4 hours compared to 6 hours on the older model. Then you have peloton mode. You can see the light's gone slightly dimmer, and this is a more moderate intensity and softer flash when a vehicle is detected. 5 hours of battery on this one compared to 8 hours on the old model. It's meant for riding in groups so you don't blind your mates. I imagine more for group rides in the dark, because in daylight the flash mode isn't really a problem for other cyclists. With flash mode, the intensity and the speed it flashes is determined based on the ambient light, because you have night flash mode and day flash mode, so the unit actually detects the light and changes it accordingly. Night flash is high intensity flashes which speed up when their vehicle is detected. You get 4 hours battery life compared to 6 on the old model. Finally, day flash mode is the maximum intensity but much slower occasional flashes until a vehicle is detected. This is the brightest at 65 lumen, and to be honest, the only mode I use, as I only ride in daylight anyway, and it's well proven that given the purpose of a rear light is to alert drivers of your presence, a constantly flashing light is most effective and conserves battery. This is claimed to give 6 hours battery life compared to the claims of 16 hours with the non-camera version. The off button is useful to have on the head unit to quickly switch it off when at a cafe stop. We don't want flashing to interrupt the consumption of cake after all, do we? Be aware though that if you are stopping for cake and you want to conserve the battery even more, this will just turn the light off, so manually turn the unit off as described earlier. So now we need to look at the whole reason why we bought this thing in the first place, and why we might put up with worse battery life than before. The camera. It can be either on continuously or off, or on radar activated mode. The latter is what I suggest you use. Leaving it off, well, you might as well saved a few quid and not bought it at all if you're not going to turn the camera on. Continuous record is going to eat that battery and record video of basically nothing happening most of the time. You bought it to detect cars approaching from behind and capture it on film in case of a close pass or an accident, so that's all you need. So radar activated mode is the one you want. You can choose between 720p and 1080p resolutions. The battery life assumptions earlier assume 1080p, and to be honest, 720 just doesn't cut it as far as good footage is concerned. So on that note, let's see the footage the unit records and how to access it. You can access the footage in two ways. First of all, there's a Varia app. It's now connected to the unit. So this is the screen that you would see if you weren't using a head unit. You can use your phone So on here you'll see battery level, which mode it's on. You can take a photograph on the fly and a video on the fly here, and the detection of vehicles would show up on the screen here. But to access, choose this icon here and you enable something called the Varia Wi-Fi. Then you watch the little man pedaling away for a while until eventually all the recordings show up. Early users did say, and there you go, unable to join for some reason. Early users did say it was clunky and unpredictable. I personally don't use this, partly for that reason, because it feels kind of awkward and slow. But really, it's not user-friendly, and I prefer to use my laptop. And as you can see, this is the reason why. So for some of you who don't have a laptop, again, that might be the reason why you would maybe opt not to use this. It can be a bit unpredictable. As you can see now there, the list of videos has come up. My preference is to use my laptop, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that this didn't involve extracting the SD card from the unit. You just connect the unit with a USB-C cable from the charging port to your laptop, and it appears as a drive, as you can see here. You open it up and choose the DCIM menu. The first folder there, event, puts any footage in there that it's recorded through incident detection. Photo is obvious, photos you've taken. The ones that say saved are the ones that you have actually taken through pressing the button on your head unit, and the ones here under unsaved are the ones that record all the time if you've chosen that, or radar activated. To make things easier, rather than go through these, I chose a couple of examples to show you. The first one shows you what it's like during the day. As you can see here, there are 4 vehicles, one after the other, and every one the number plate can easily be recognized. I then tried it in less good light, in dusk. So this vehicle here going past, you have to kind of move slowly until you get the right shot and then take a photo. So there's a photo of it being shown clearly in bad light. Here's another scenario. You just have to catch it at the right time where your radar is actually highlighting. You'll notice there that the first car wasn't really clear and the second one was, as you can see through this photograph here. This car here in the dusk is almost right behind me, and again the number plate clearly visible. I then went out in the complete darkness to see how it fared in that situation, and there it is, and a photograph of that. You can see it's not brilliant, but you can make out the number plate. And here's another one in the darkness. It really is more of an issue with headlights shining right into the camera, and again a photograph of that one, and that is the best I could get, and it isn't 100% clear, so you need to be aware of that. And I do wonder how other cameras fare in darkness when the headlights of the vehicle are shining right into the camera. All in all, I'd say it doesn't perform as well in poor light as it does during the daylight. That's obvious to see. It gets much better when a vehicle is directly behind you and reasonably close. Now, in reality, they are the vehicles that you need to be worrying about, because they're the ones that are likely to either close pass or hit you. If it's already taking a wide berth, then it's never going to trouble you, and therefore the fact that it's more difficult to get a good shot of the number plate is probably irrelevant. Although it's not the purpose of the unit, I've also found it useful for the occasional rear-facing shot to add into a film edit. So if you do shoot video on the bike, it's an extra angle to include. And here is an example of a photograph taken with the unit. I've been using some version of the Garmin radar for years now, so obviously I'm a fan. As a rear light radar, this unit is fantastic as the older versions. The addition of a camera does make it a hefty purchase at $349.99 in the UK, when you can still buy the non-camera version for around half that price. It is the only gadget of its kind though that combines light, radar and camera. There are some potential frustrations. The measly 16GB SD card, but that can be got round as we saw earlier. Slow and clunky app, although not an issue if you're a PC or laptop user. The quality of the footage could be better with stabilisation and better resolution, but most of the time it's good enough for me. I only ride during the day, so it's definitely not an issue for me, as the possibility of not getting an accurate number plate is when darkness falls. If you're commuting in the winter, then that could be enough to opt for the non-camera version instead. The battery life for some might be an issue, but bear in mind 6 hours are going to be more than enough for most people, and the reality for me has actually been better than that. This ride actually had an elapsed time of 6 hours because I was stopping and filming in the countryside, so not a lot of traffic triggering the camera, but by the end I had 35% left in the battery. This one, a few days later, again much longer elapsed time, this time about 6.5 hours, with Paris traffic triggering the camera constantly. I had a low battery warning by the end, but it didn't run out. I've heard current Varia radar users say they will stick to the non-camera version for now, but may end up being persuaded if they had an incident. Well, there's the point. The camera isn't going to make you feel more safe on the road, the radar already does that, but you have the camera in case something happens. A good friend of mine, Phil, had a very bad incident when hit by a car from behind. In addition to the injury, he also endured months of stress through denial of responsibility and, as it turns out in the end, false witnesses. If he had this on his bike, that argument would have been over within the first week. And that was the deciding factor for me to decide to go for the purchase. It may end up just recording footage that will never end up being looked at, but that's no different to dash cams in cars. And look how normal that is now. If you haven't entered the world of Garmin light radars, look at the video that will be linked here shortly, which is a long-term review of the older model, which covers everything this does apart from the camera. If you're an existing user, I guess like me, you'd never be without it. And I hope I've helped you make up your mind to decide to upgrade or not. It's a personal choice at the end of the day. This thing isn't perfect yet, but I still think it's great. So if you found this helpful either way, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel below, which will help YouTube decide to show my content to other cyclists. I'd be really grateful if you did that. So that's all from me. Happy cycling, and I'll see you soon. Here's that video I promised you, and click on this yellow logo to subscribe for more cycling content. See ya!